Welcome back to my channel, guys. Today we're going to be drafting Natalie Bray Bodice pattern. If you're conversant with Natalie Bray, you'll notice that all her patterns were drafted in centimeters, and this is because Natalie Bray was a British designer and a pattern cutting educator, and in the UK and Europe the metric system is the standard for pattern drafting, so the centimeter is the standard. And that's because it helps to achieve very precise and consistent results. But it doesn't change the fact that you can still use your inches when you're not doing this method. But for this method, we're going to stick to centimeters. So first and foremost, I'm going to be marking 1.5 centimeters. And that's what I'm doing. I'm going to mark 1.5 centimeters on this point. So on the top edge of the pattern paper, I'm going to be marking 2 centimeters, and after marking that 2 centimeters, I'm going to use my ruler to rule a line across. Next, I'm going to be marking the length of our bodice pattern, and that will be 75 centimeters. This is the instruction that was given on the textbook. So Natalie Bray has a textbook, and for you to be able to achieve this, you need to follow the instructions on the textbook, and that's the reason why I'm drafting this video for you guys, to make it easy. You don't have to own the textbook to be able to understand what I'm doing, but once you follow the instruction I'm right now, you'll be able to get it at the end of the day. So this length I'm marking now is 75 centimeters, and that would be the length of our bodice pattern. Guys, this is the proportion table, and as you can see, this is where I'll be getting most of my measurement that I'll be using for this drafting. And if you can look closely, you see that it's got proportion for different sizes. This is my measurement, and this is my proportion. Some of these things are given as an instruction on that textbook, but as you can see, this is my bust measurement, and this right here means that I've divided it by 2, and this right here means I've divided it by 4. This is my waist measurement. This right here means I've divided it by 2, and this also means that I've divided it by 4. So I did it like this to actually make it easy for me while I'm explaining to you guys. Guys, please try not to get confused. All these measurements are in centimeters. Please remember they're all in centimeters. So we're going to check our measurement chart and look for the biggest measurement. For average people, the hip is the biggest, but some other people is the bust. So what we're going to do is to divide the biggest measurement by 2. So if your bust is the biggest, you divide your bust by 2 and add 5 centimeters. If your hip is the biggest, you divide it by 2 and add 3 centimeters. In my own case, hip is the largest measurement, which was 106 centimeters. I've divided it by 2, which gave me 53 centimeters. Now I'm going to be adding 3 centimeters to it. Just to be on the safe side, I always like to include extra 2 centimeters to my measurement.
The reason why I'm adding extra 2 centimeters is because we are doing our bodies, the whole bodies on this pattern, and this is going to be our back and this is going to be our front. So for some people who got a larger hip, after you're done, you notice that the hip line, the front hip line and the back hip line would likely overlap. They have large hip, but to prevent that from happening, I add extra 2 centimeters so that the back hip and the front hip will be on separate points so that it doesn't overlap. That's the essence of that extra 2 centimeter that I added.
So I'll go ahead and measure this 58 centimeter from this point to this point. So that would be the measurement we got from our hip circumference that was divided by 4 plus 3 plus another 2 centimeters. So I'll extend this line across, and this will be the square where our back and our front pattern is going to be.
So this is going to be my top line. This is going to be my top line, is our center back, and this right here is going to be our center front. So we're going to start using this, our proportion. Remember, we have a proportion table from the textbook, and we're going to mark this point O, which for me is 3 centimeters. For some other people, it can be more than that. For bigger sizes, I think it's about 3.5 centimeters. For my size, an average size is 3 centimeters. So I'm going to mark that as our point O.
Next, mark the 3 centimeters on the center back line from the top line. So we mark 3 centimeters, and that will be our point O.
So I'm going to start the measurement. So any measurement I'm starting now, most likely I'm going to be starting from point O. So from point O, I'm going to mark the depth of armhole, which is also our bust line. So for me, it's 21.5 centimeters. So from point O, I'm going to mark down 21.5 centimeters of our armhole. This point is going to be the depth of our armhole. I'm going to be marking length to waist from point O. So mine is 40 centimeters, and I'm going to, so length to waist is 40 centimeters, and I'm going to mark that from point O. So that is going to be my waist point. So it's from point O. So remember that this has proportion. So remember, this is depth of armhole, and this is depth of armhole, and this is our waist point. So the next I'm going to mark is to mark our hip point. Our hip point is usually mostly from 22 to 28 centimeters. So it depends on your measurement. So you're going to be marking on your body, you're going to measure from your waist to your hip point. So mine is 23 centimeters, and from my waist, I'm going to be marking 23 centimeters as my hip point. So this is the average measurement for people. So you just have to use your tape measure, place it on your body point to determine which is your measurement. I have measured mine is 23 centimeters. So my waist to hip point is 23 centimeters. For me, this point to this point is 21.5 centimeters, and 0.0 to my waist point is 40 centimeters, and my waist to my hip point is 23 centimeters. So if you check from here to here, if I measure it in total, I'll be getting 63 centimeters. So you see, I've got 63 centimeters. So I'm going to make it, so this is my hip point, which is 63 centimeters. Then I'm going to do is to extend this depth of armhole, my waist point, and my hip point across the center front line. So those points, I'm going to mark my point O on the center front, and then I'll measure exactly the measurement I have. So my point O is 3 centimeters, which I've marked. So I'm going to mark 21.5 centimeters, which is the depth of my armhole. I'm repeating this because I want to connect this to my center back just to get a perfect straight line. So it's 21.5 centimeters, and for my hip measurement, my waist measurement is 40 centimeters, and for the hip is 63 centimeters. So this is just to give accurate measurement. So all I'm doing is to extend those points together. going to do now is to label this line. So this is going to be our bust line, and this is going to be our waist line, and this right here is going to be our hip line. So is to mark our shoulder line. From point 0 downwards, our shoulder line is going to be another 3 centimeters. So if you check our proportion, the proportion is fixed for every sizes. So point 0 to shoulder line is 3 centimeters for every sizes. So I'm going to, this is 3 centimeters right there. So how to get our butt point is to measure point 0 to bust line. So this is our bust line, and also the depth, that's why I wrote this here, the depth of armhole. If you're not saying it correctly, just ignore this thing and focus on this as our bust line. So it's also a depth of armhole and also bust line. So forgive me if it's quite confusing. So now we're going to be marking out our back line, and our back line is usually 0.0 to bust line divided by 2. So, and this is 21.5 centimeters. So we're going to round it up to the nearest whole number, which is 22 centimeters, and divide it by 2. So that will give us 11 centimeters. So back line is 0.0 to bust line divided by 2. So if yours is not in whole number, for example, mine is 21.5 centimeters, I'm going to round it up to 22 centimeters, and I'm going to mark half point of 22 centimeters, which is 11 centimeters. So I'm going to keep that here. So this point right here is going to be my back point. So we're going to be extending these lines across, but not to the end, not to center front point. So we're going to just gauge the half point of this pattern and just extend it forward a little bit. So I'm going to mark the point. So right here, point 0 is 3 centimeters, and shoulder point is also 3 meters outwards. So I'll extend it as right here, and this other one, which is also 0.0, and from here to this end, 0.0, this is 11 centimeters.
So I extend 0.0, same as the shoulder point. Also, I'm going to extend our back point.
Neckline, and this is our shoulder line, and this is our back line.
On the 0.0, we're going to be marking our back neck width, which is 7 centimeters from the proportion table. So if you look at the proportion table, it's 7 centimeters. We're going to mark that on our 0.0. We're going to extend it by 2 centimeters upward and use our ruler to connect the points. So that will be our neck width. So the extended neck point is going to be our NP, which is neck point.
On my back line, I'm going to mark half of my back width. So on this back line right here, I'm going to be marking half of my back width, which is 22 centimeters. 22 centimeters on this point. On the bust line, I'm going to be marking this same measurement on the bust line and the same measurement on my shoulder line. So I'll connect those points together. The next thing I'm going to do is to extend this shoulder line by 2 cm. That 2 cm is also a fixed proportion on the table. So this is 2 centimeters right here, and I'm going to extend this shoulder point by 2 centimeters. This proportion is fixed on the table, so that's extended by 2 centimeters. Our S as our SP, which is your shoulder point. So I'm going to use a slant line to connect this neck point to our shoulder point. On the bust line right here, we're going to mark this back up measurement. This back up measurement is 5.5 centimeters. So from this point to this point, we extend by 5.5 centimeters. Always remember that these proportions are fixed on the table for different sizes. So if you're doing a bigger bust, definitely your back up point, if you check the proportion table, is most likely going to be more than 5.5 centimeters. So this is not a fixed proportion. Like I said, you always refer back to the proportion table to look for the appropriate measurement for each size. So for this size I'm working on now, the back up measurement is 5.5 centimeters. And what I'm going to do now is to extend this point to this point by 5.5 centimeters. As our UP point, so it's called back up point, UP point. So from this point, from this our back line point, I'm going to come down by 3 centimeters, and this is to create our curve armhole. So this is 3 centimeters right here. I'll write 3 centimeters. On this point, I'm going to mark up by 3 centimeters right here. This point right here, 3 centimeters.
To use the curve end of our pattern master to connect. So we'll connect this point to our curve end. Also we'll do the same for the other. This is going to create our armhole. Next, we're going to use the curve end of our pattern master to connect our neck point. That's to create our neckline.
My hip is 106 centimeters and the quarter is 26.5 centimeters. I'm going to mark it on my hip line right here.
So mine is 106. I'm going to divide it by 4, which is 26.5, and then I'm going to add 1 centimeter. So that will give me 26.5 plus 1 centimeter, and I will mark that my hip point. We're going to connect our UP straight down to our hip point with a straight ruler and roll across. To define the waist with a curve,
I'm going to mark in by 2 centimeters. But bear in mind that this instruction has been given on the Natalie Bray textbooks. So I'm going to mark in by 2 centimeters like that. So like a curved line right here. And you have to create like that curve right here.
I'm now going to use my ruler to connect the upper point to the waist. I'm now going to use the curve end of my pattern master to create a curve on my hip. To create a curvy end on my hip and connect it to my waist. So that gives me a curve.
So to find our back point, I'm going to mark in by 2 centimeters right here. 2 centimeters to connect it to our back line. So I'm going to connect this point to our back line. I'm going to use my ruler. This is to create a defined back. I'm going to use my ruler to mark this end. For some people it can actually be longer than that. For me, I'm going to be using 16 centimeter here because of the length of the torso of my client. So I'll be using 16. So on this point I'm going to extend this to create a fixed. So 16 centimeter is what I have, and I'm going to extend it from my waist to this point. I'm at 16 centimeters and I'm going to extend it. Don't forget, this is 2 centimeters right here, and this is 2 centimeters right here. To get my true waistline, this is my waistline. To get my true waistline, I'm going to come down by 0.5 inch. This is going to serve as my new waistline. So I'm going to slant it to this 2 centimeter right there, and that's going to be our new waistline. To create our dart point right here, and to create our dart point, we're going to be using the quarter measurement of our back width to create our dart measurement. So our back width here is 44 centimeters, so divided by 4 is 11 centimeters. So we're using our back width to create our dart point. Start it from this slanted center back. Remember, this is our center back right here, this is our waist, and it's our center back. It's our new center back. Now we're going to mark the length of the dart. So for this top end, you can use between 12 to 13 centimeters for the length of the dart, and we use it for the bottom end. You can use between 13 to 15 centimeters. So this you can vary because you gauge this by checking how long the torso of your client is. So for me, on the top end, I'm going to be using 13 centimeters, and on the bottom end, I'm going to be using 15 centimeters because I'm working with a very tall client. So first off, with this top, I'm using 13 centimeters as the length of my dart, which I'm going to mark right here. So I'm using 13 centimeters, and on the bottom part, I'm going to be using 15 centimeters. So guys, don't forget, this varies, and you're going to be connecting this point to your new waistline below your previous waistline, so right here. So I used the length of my dart on this point as 13 centimeters, and below I'm using 15 centimeters right there. So this can actually vary. It depends on how tall your client is. So you can be longer than this if your client is very tall. But now rechecking, I've seen that my client is medium height, so I'm using this. She's tall but not extremely tall, but for those that are extremely tall, you can bring it down to this point, but I'm not going to get to this point because I'll stop here. But now the size of our dart is 2 centimeters, so it means that on this side I'll mark 1 centimeter, and on this side I'll mark 1 centimeter. So what I'm going to do is to mark 1 centimeter on each side. So if I'm to use this, I'm going to mark 1 centimeter on this point and another 1 centimeter. Go ahead and connect these darts together. So to do is to check our shoulder width. This is 12.5 centimeters. It's supposed to have 12.5 centimeters. To create my shoulder dart, my shoulder is supposed to be 12.5 centimeters. The book says that for the remaining, like after you've measured this, you subtract your shoulder from it. My shoulder is 12.5 centimeters. So any other thing that you have left here is going to stand as your dart. So if I should subtract 12.5 from 17.5, I'm going to be having 5 centimeters. So first off, I'm going to divide this point into 2 and mark it So I'll divide it into 2 and mark the point of the shoulder right here. So this is going to be going to stand as our shoulder dart. 17.5 from here to here. Meanwhile, our measurement is 12.5 centimeters. So we have excess of 5 centimeters. So that excess of 5 centimeters, we're going to mark it as our dart. So I'm going to mark, I'll use 2.5 centimeters on both sides of the dart. So it's 2.5 centimeters on both sides. And another 2.5 centimeters. So this is going to be taking out our excess measurement, should be 8 centimeters. This by extending this together.
Guys, I'm going to cross-check my shoulder measurement to make sure it's accurate. So I'm going to do that without the dart.
So for the front, as you can see on the back, we've already drafted, we've extended the bust line, we've extended the waistline, and we've extended the hip line. So now what we're going to do on the center front is to create a true bust line and a chest line here, and then we'll create our shoulder line and our neckline as well. So for our chest line is 4 centimeter upwards, and this is a fixed measurement. So we'll mark 4 centimeter upwards. Constant for all bust measurements. This 4 cm is a constant measurement. I'm also going to mark another 4 centimeter, and this is going to be our true bust line. To get the base of our neckline, I'm going to mark the book. This is like the book has said we should mark from this point to this point 7.5. So this is an instruction directly from the Natalie Bray book. So
this is going to serve as a base of neckline.
So from this point downwards, I'm going to mark 4.5 centimeter from this edge downwards. So that is going to be our shoulder line. So I'm going to mark 4.5 centimeters. This changes based on the size of the bust, like the book said, 4.5 centimeters. And I'll mark those points. I'll connect those points with a straight ruler to create a straight line.
I'm going to label the following as shoulder line, neckline, and chest line. This is our true bust line. So on the top line, we're going to be marking 7 centimeter. That will be our neck width, just like we did on the back. So we mark 7 centimeter on the top line. Also on our neckline point, we're going to be marking 7 centimeters. So mark 7 centimeters. Use our ruler and connect the top end and neckline. On the shoulder line, from the center front, we're going to be marking 16.5 centimeters from the center front. So bear in mind that this is a fixed number. So on your shoulder line, you mark 16.5 centimeters.
Is our neck point. So I'm going to mark with a slant line connecting from this our neck point to this point, and then slanting to that end. So remember that this is our shoulder line measurement, which was 16.5, and which is a constant measurement for most people. So I'm going to just extend this point slanting. So on this point right here, I'm going to come forward by 3 centimeters right there. So you see that I have just marked 3 centimeters from this adjacent line. So I've marked 3 centimeters. My pattern master to create a neckline. Our dart point on this center front, I'm going to divide, you see our chest width, we're going to divide it by 4. So my chest width here is 46 centimeter. Dividing it by 4, I got 11.5 centimeters. So this will be the point of our dart on this bust line. Mark 11.5 right there. 11.5 right there. That is going to be.
Also from the center front to the slanted shoulder line, I'm going to also mark the 11.5 centimeters, and then I'll connect those points together. But before then, come down on the bust line by 2 centimeters. Then I'll mark 2 centimeters, and then I'm going to use a ruler to connect those points together. Straight line is to create that point.
After this is done, I'm going to come this end by 2 centimeters like that. So this is 2 centimeters, this point is 2 centimeters. So I'll connect this point to this point. this 2 centimeter right here is just a guide to create our dart point. So when you check on the proportion table, our dart is 7.5 centimeter for the size that I'm drafting. So this 7.5 centimeter now, I'm going to mark it as our dart point. This proportion depends on what measurement you're working with. Here, from this point now, I'm going to mark 7.5 centimeter, which is on our dart proportion, 7.5 centimeter. So I'm going to mark that 7.5 centimeter right here. 7.5 centimeter. Right here is our dart. So I'm going to cancel it out. So that point right here is our dart. Is to create our shoulder. So to create our shoulder point. So know that this is our dart, and our shoulder point right here is 12.5 centimeter. If you remember, that was what we had in our back pattern. So now we're going to try to get that here. So this is our shoulder, which is 12.5 centimeter. Two ways to do this: 12.5 centimeter plus this 7.5 centimeter length of that. You can add it up. Say for example, you have for your shoulder point. So you have that as 7.5 centimeters, and your shoulder dart, which is 12.5 centimeter right here, shoulder dart is 12.5 centimeters. So when you add it up, you're going to be having 20 centimeters. So you're going to be having 20 centimeters. So that's the first way to do it. You can mark your 20 centimeter right. You can just mark your 20 centimeter right here. And the second way to do it is measure, you jump and start from here. So if you measure 12.5 centimeter without including this, let's try that. So this is 7.5 centimeters. So you jump it and start from here. So you have this as your 12.5 centimeters. So you're literally getting the same outcome. This point right here is going to be our SP. So if you close the dots, this dot like that, it's still going to be 12.5 centimeters. So we're going to measure our chest width, half of the measurement right now. So we're marking our chest width, and our chest is 46 centimeters. If we divide it by 2, it gives us 23 centimeters. So what we're going to do now is to mark that 23 centimeters on our chest line, excluding this dot. So we'll measure from here to this point and stop right there, and then skip from there and move from here to this end. So we'll measure that 23 centimeters. We'll measure from here, from the center front to the line before the dart point, which has given us 12 centimeters. So we'll move that 12 centimeters and start it again from this end. So and then mark 23 centimeters, which is what we have. So it's to connect my SB and chest points together with this vertical.
We're going to mark our chest width on our bust line as well. So remember, we did divide our chest width by 4. We're also going to mark that on our bust line, and minus the dart. Remember, you're not including the dart. Mark the point. Use our ruler to connect the points together. This angle, I'm going to be coming up by 1.5 centimeters. So I'm on 1.5 centimeters. Then use my ruler to draw a line. The shoulder point to my chest line, I'm going to divide it by 2. So I've got 12 centimeters. By 2, I'm going to mark 6 centimeters halfway. Again, I'm going to mark in by 1 centimeter.
Our chest point, and how to do that is to calculate half bust plus 5 centimeters minus back. So our half bust is 46 centimeters. 46 centimeters. 46 centimeters plus 5 centimeters, which is 51 centimeters minus back. So that will give us, we'll have to measure this measurement and subtract it from 51 centimeters. That will give us, now going to measure our back. This is our back measurement. We're going to measure it and see what we've got here. We've got 26.5. So our back is 26.5. So what we'll do is 51 centimeter minus 26.5. This is going to give us 24.5 centimeters. So we're going to be marking 24.5 centimeters on my bust line. On this my bust line, I'm going to measure 24.5 centimeters. I'm going to mark 11.5, skipping our darts. Remember, we're going to be skipping these darts. 1.5, skipping the darts. So 11.5 right here. I'm going to be marking. Connect these points together. We're going to be moving to the hip line. So what we're going to be doing is quarter of our hip measurement. So hip measurement for me is 106 centimeter divided by 4 is 26 plus 5 centimeters, and I'm going to be adding 3, which is going to make it 29.5 centimeter. So on this hip line, I'm going to mark 29.5 centimeter. So I'm going to connect this our UP down here to our hip.
To define our waist, on the waistline we're going to come in by 1.5 centimeter. So I'm going to mark it 1.5 centimeter on the waistline. I will use my pattern master to define that point. This would create a point for our waist.
Like this, our waist point to our hip point, just like that. Our true waistline, we're going to come down here by exactly what we've got here. So this is half centimeter, this is half centimeter. I'm going to mark half centimeter right there, and on the center front we're going to be coming down by 1 centimeter.
I'll use my ruler to join those points to create our true bust line.
This right here is 0.5 centimeter, same as this 0.5 centimeter, and this right here is 1 centimeter. Let's continue with our pattern to create our dart on this front. So starting from the center front, we're going to be marking chest width divided by 4. So our chest width is 46 centimeters divided by 4 is 11.5 centimeters. So we're going to be using 11.5 centimeters to create our chest width, to create our dart, so that it can align with this. So we're using 11.5 from center front, 11.5 centimeter from center front. So I'm going to make sure that it's the same length with this top end, and the bottom end is the same length as well. So this is, we used 13 centimeter right here and 15 centimeter on the bottom. So we're going to replicate the same here. So we're going to replicate 13 centimeter right here. So make sure it's 11.5 as the width. So we'll use 13 right here, and we're going to also do the same for the bottom. 15 centimeter. Mark 15 centimeter, which is right here. So I'll make sure that this is also 11.5 centimeter by measurement. So this is 11. On the front, this is a fixed point and it's 3 centimeters. So I'm going to go in by 1.5 centimeter on this point and 1.5 centimeter on this point. I'm going to connect points together.
So guys, to perfect our shoulder line, we're going to be closing in our darts, just like I'm doing. So you have to do this very carefully. So this is curvy because of the darts, so that's why it's not laying flat. So to make it easier, you can use a tape to hold it down. Then after that, just making sure it's laying properly. So now we use our ruler to connect from that point to this end. So that will be our new shoulder line. So next I'm going to be drilling. So you see that newly drawn line, I'm going to drill it so that it can transfer to the other end of my pattern paper. So I'll take out the tape. As if you look closely, you see that the line has been drawn with that thing that I just used to drill it. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to use my ruler to now connect those points. That would extend our dart. So as you can see, our dart has been extended.
At this point, I'm going to extend a little bit. I'm going to increase the length of this shoulder point. You see, the dart has extended it. So if you don't extend this point and you cut only on this point, you're going to be losing some fabric on here. Now with extend, so that when you're done joining, it becomes exactly the same length with the rest of your pattern. So this you cancel out. See.
If you really enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe and comment. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.